Welcome back to another episode of Jeremy's Point of View. Here in today's episode, I'm discussing Better Call Saul, Season 6, Episode 3. And I've got to start off with telling you guys, this was a tough one to get through all the way. A tough episode for one of my favorite characters of the entire series, the entire show. This was a dark episode. It was a little bit of a slower episode. And even though we know where a lot of these characters in the show eventually end up, this show still does a great job of building tension, having me on the edge of my seat. I was absolutely riveted and glued to my television the entire time I was watching this episode. So I do want to give you guys some warning. There will be some spoiler talk. I'm going to go over a little bit of the episode, especially the big thing that happens in this episode. It is the majority of the episode, and I don't want to spoil it for you guys if you have not watched it yet. So there's your spoiler warning. And now let's go ahead and we will dive into things. So, majority of this episode followed Nacho'S storyline, and we got to see where he ended up after the last episode, after the shootout at the hotel. The truck that he escaped in didn't make it very far, and ultimately it broke down. And upon breaking down on the side of the road, he had to find a place to hide. And the closest, quickest thing that he could think to get into was this abandoned oil tanker that was in a field right off from where the truck broke down. Once he climbed into the tanker, there was some oil left in it. And when the Salamancas ended up showing up, he did slowly submerge himself into that oil and hold his breath long enough to evade detection ultimately at that time. From there, we do see a scene where he ends up traveling to a garage. The man there is very kind to him, allows him to rinse, wash up. He gives him soap, washcloth, allows him to use his phone, no questions asked. And we do see Nacho place 2 phone calls. The first one goes to his father, and there's not much said there. Basically, his father still alluding to the fact that he needs to get out of this life, and the only recommendation he can give him is that he should call the police. Nacho, not having much else to say, just wants to hear his father's voice, and the phone call ends there. And the next phone call he places is to Gustavo Fring, and that is where we get to see the other side of the coin from the last episode where Mike answered the phone, was having a conversation, and said he wants to speak with you. We do get to hear what Nacho was ultimately saying to Mike, and then Mike gives the phone to Gustavo and basically tells him, you need me to keep quiet. So Nacho agrees that if they will keep his father safe, protect the one thing in this world that he loves, then he will turn himself in and ultimately sacrifice himself and say what needs to be said to protect Gustavo and ultimately protect his father in the end. We then ultimately see them sneak Nacho into the country. They bring Nacho to Gustavo's compound where they prep him for the next day. They inform him that tomorrow will be the day that they go and hand him over, and he will be tortured and executed. And this is where we do get a glimpse into what the plan is. They do want to, in some ways, make it so Nacho doesn't go through that torture, doesn't go through or even risk the chance of him giving up Gustavo's name. So they inform him after he admits that it was the Peruvians that paid him. He is to charge at one of the guys, and they will shoot him and give him a quick, painless death ultimately. And in the final scene of the episode, we ultimately get to see how this exchange plays out. And I think what they did with the story, the character, even though a lot of us, I think, especially going into the end of this episode, we had hopes that Nacho could make it through the episode, but I think we all knew he wasn't going to. I think the death that they ultimately gave him is the best death that he could have asked for. We see Nacho admit that it was the Peruvians, but we also see that he tells Hector, I'm the one that switched out your sugar or your heart medication for sugar pills. I'm the reason you're in that wheelchair. I would have done this for free. Nobody would have had to have paid me. And he tells the Salamancas what he ultimately thinks about them. He uses a piece of glass that he snuck out of the garbage when nobody was around at Gustavo's compound to cut his bindings, and he grabs the gun and holds the guy hostage. And in that one moment, I wondered to myself, is he actually going to get out of this? But I think ultimately I knew deep down inside that he wasn't going to. He let it kind of settle in for a second with the gun on the guy's head, and then ultimately pulled the trigger and ended his own life. He took his own life. I think that was the most poetic way Nacho could have gone out. At least he got to go out on his own terms ultimately. Nacho's story was ultimately the biggest piece of this episode, but we did get to see some more scheming going on with Kim and Jimmy with their plans against Howard. We got to see a little bit more of what that plan is, but we still don't have a full grasp on exactly what that is. There's a great scene where they hire Huel, and he does what they refer to as the valet scheme. Absolutely love those scenes, but ultimately this episode was about Nacho. He was a character I know a lot of fans absolutely loved, myself included. I'm going to miss him. I think ultimately, though, we all knew his time was coming to an end. And in my original video, at least for episodes 1 and 2, I actually thought Nacho's storyline was going to run a lot longer this season. I didn't expect it to end by episode 3. I thought they had done a great job in episodes 1 and 2 setting a lot up for the season, and for it to come to an end already in episode 3, I was actually kind of surprised by that. And in a lot of ways, I think that was a good way of subverting my expectations. I thought they did a good job of building up the storyline, really making it intense for the first few episodes, giving us this third episode where they really focused on it, and then ultimately giving Nacho what is probably the best conclusion his character could have had. As much as we all probably would have liked to have seen him turn his life around and sail off in the sunset, that's not what this universe is. This is a realistic show, and not everybody gets a happy ending ultimately. I think Vince Gilligan and crew are doing a fantastic job. The season has been great so far, and I know as the episodes continue and we get to the end of this first half, season 6 is obviously broken up into 2 parts. Once we get to the end of this first part of the season, I know they're going to continue to ramp it up. It's going to continue to get better and better, just like the final season of Breaking Bad. I'm excited to ride along with you guys on this and continue to discuss each episode. So please leave your comments in the comments section below. Hit that like button on the video. Subscribe to the channel. Let's get a discussion going. And I will see you guys on the next episode of Jeremy's Point of View. Until next time, peace.